Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Patchnotes Rundown. This time we're going to have a look at patch 9.06, which is going to go live either today or up until Wednesday. It is introducing a new unit, which is very exciting because I really love the design of the new unit called Cursed Casket in the base form. Later on, 2 upgrades are possible, either the Cage of Pain or the last one, the Iron Maiden. Let's present the new unit first. It is a tier 4 unit that is not connected to any legion. So the tier 4 status only matters for the hybrid Mastermind option at the moment, and you are still able to get it with any other Mastermind option. You cannot get it by selecting a set legion. It does cost 130 gold, so it's quite a good price to maybe consider it as a starter. It is melee, which is often pretty good for units to open with, for the fact that you will be able to make them tank a little bit better, and it does have Pierce, Arcane, Armor, and Defensive types. Obviously, right, we already heard Arcane, so that might be a little bit more difficult to handle because, well, you do have wave 3 that is magic, but apart from that, wave 7 is going to be the next wave that requires Arcane Armor, so you will have somewhat of a weak defense type on this unit. I think the specialty about this unit is the spell it does have, and it is called the Iron Hail. Unleashes a volley of cursed swords, dealing 20 times 3 pierce damage in a small area around the target. So you basically have a 60 damage pierce damage AoE spell, a little bit dependent on the location of the units, whether they actually take 60 damage or a little bit less. So we do have another AoE unit, probably comparable to a Pyro. I cannot really say how large this area is, but I think could roundabout say it might be the area of effect of a Pyro, maybe a little bit less. It is 20 times 3 pierce damage to not make Mole count it. So a Mole does only reduce the damage, I think, up to 4. And since it does deal 20 times 3 damage, a Mole does not have any effect on the spell of the unit. Obviously, it does have an effect on the usual attacks this unit is gonna deal. But, very important, a Hermit obviously does counter this effect still, dealing a flat amount of 8 HP, I think it is, per second. So, Mole, not efficient against this unit in terms of countering the spell. Hermit still is. Later on, we do have the upgrades. We have the first upgrade, adding another 100 gold to the total value. And the only thing that's going to happen is obviously more HP, more DPS. It's important to note those HP look insane, right? We do have 2700 HP for a unit that costs up until this stage 230 gold. We have a gold per HP of around about 11, which is pretty good, but obviously be aware of the fact that it's an arcane unit, so you will have to pay or you will have to receive a little bit more HP per gold because it is the weakest of all the defensive types. And the only thing that's going to change actually is just the amount of swords in the spell. So we have first upgrade 35 instead of 20 swords, and the last upgrade once again 100 gold, adding another 10 of those swords. So far we have an additional 15 swords here, right? We have an upgrade from 20 to 35, which is 15 swords for 100 gold. And in the last upgrade, we do have another 10 swords, which is, in terms of this spell, a little bit less, but there's a little bit more to it. Also reduces the damage of targets by 1 for 3 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. So you do have a little bit of a benefit towards upgrading it to the final form, to the Iron Maiden, right? The biggest damage improvement is gonna be from base unit to the first upgrade, if you consider the upgrades, and then you have a little bit less of a damage improvement, but you do have a nice side effect. I can't really say how much this is gonna be, and how important it's going to be, because if you reduce it by 1, it can stack up to 10 times, so you can reduce up to 10 damage per source. I'm quite convinced that it could happen, that this looks pretty good the earlier you build it, but I'm not quite sure whether it's going to have such a big effect on later waves. I think the unit overall, especially with the small amount of damage it deals, it deals X time 3 damage, looks like it is a very, very strong early game unit, early mid game, falling off a little bit in the late game. Maybe this damage reduction actually is some source of late game scaling that is missing on the unit itself. I didn't test it too much yet. I only tested it once when it was first introduced on the PTR server, but that's the time we will discuss about as the unit is finally on the live servers. But very interesting concept. I really like the design. If you will see it in game, it's really cool animated. Like it's shooting up the knives in the air and or swords in the air, and then they're dropping down in the rain. Looking pretty exciting. Next on, we have a new animated background. We already have the Legion Lord, the King, the Legion King. Then we have the Sora, and now the third one is gonna be the Sovereign background. Here's a short video snippet. Well, there's some sort of background animation to it, right? It's looking pretty insane. I'm quite sure it's gonna be once again around the same cost as the Sora, which was I think 1,260 premium essence. So if that's your desired background, maybe you want to purchase it. We have 2 more skins getting introduced. First of all, we have Priestess of the Abyss in the Hellfire skin. I think it's looking pretty cool. There are better skins in my opinion, but it's not looking bad at all. But the next one, the Sovereign of Death, holy moly, this is maybe one of the best skins. It's looking insane. It has some sort of a WoW touch, or maybe a Karthus in League of Legends. It's looking pretty fire. I'm definitely gonna get this one and gonna play it. It's looking insane in my eyes. I don't know what's about your taste, but this one is insane in my eyes. Well, next on, we have a lot of improvement and fixes. Once again, we're not gonna discuss all of them, but I might want to show you one which is in my eyes quite important for some of the single player enjoys, and this is the pause feature you can now use in play versus the AI. So you now are able to pause your game in the campaign, for example, and then just get your delivery done, get some food, whatever. I think this is a very important feature. A lot of people were wishing for it, and there's no reason not to have it, but finally I think they had the time to implement it, and I'm really loving it. Well, you can read about all the other features and fixes yourself if you want to. Link in the description, obviously leading to the patch note. And now getting to the game balance. First of all, we have some general changes, which actually surprised me. Let's be honest, they really surprised me because we have massive buffs on the king. We have first of all the Giant Slayer, which is the percentile HP that the king deals on addition to its attack damage, now getting from 14% to 17%. That's quite a impressive buff, especially towards the late game where units tend to have a larger HP pool. The attack speed and immolation damage increased by 15%. So this just means that all sources of AoE are getting increased by 50%. All sources of AoE king spell. Why is that the case? Well, immolation does tick once per second. The damage here is increased. The attack speed increased by 15%. This makes it that the spell is getting casted faster. So I really like those changes. We have some actual hard buffs, right? 15% isn't too bad. This looks pretty impressive towards a strong king. Base attack damage is decreased though by 40%. So you can already see you have some massive changes on the spell. So larger leagues aren't as much of a threat anymore. Giant Slayer means you have overall the possibility to kill larger units a little bit faster because you deal more damage based on their HP. But the overall damage is getting reduced. Makes sense. And Upgrade King Attack and Upgrade King Spell have some changes. We have Upgrade King Attack getting buffed, which means You can compensate this nerf by just upgrading your king, and the spell, well, the king's spell overall is just a little bit stronger, but the upgrades aren't as effective anymore. So I think overall it's going to balance the king out a little bit, but we have massive buffs in my eyes on two things. First of all, the large HP units, so boss waves, for example, could benefit here. And you have massive improvements on AoE if the king is not yet upgraded with AoE. So king is a little bit less vulnerable against larger leagues, for example, in the early game, because you just get the AoE out faster, and against larger leagues in terms of HP pool of the units. And it says it here as well, the king makes it more vulnerable to small leagues and relatively less vulnerable to large leagues. That's what I just said. I really like those changes, even though I didn't see them, especially this year. Attack speed increased by the spells, because there often was the case that you died, but all the other units that were still living were so low HP, so just another spell would have killed them. And I think this could happen less likely now that the king is just killing them within 3 times of an AoE damage. Alright, we have some dual building changes. We have the AoE damage reduction getting buffed again. I think it's a huge problem that you have the Spyro egg, for example, in Classic. A lot of people are complaining about this, which I can definitely understand. Okay, going towards the Mastermind changes. First of all, we have a reduced penalty on cartel. Personally, I can see it. I feel like -37 is still a huge hit if you play it. Often players can't really get that much of a lead these days compared to other options like read or cash out. And then snowball hard, I think, yes, it can happen if you have a teammate supporting you, starving your opponent, and you can just income send, stuff like this. But in general, you're not able to get this benefit out of a cartel. That's what it feels to me now. Same a little bit with Castle. Castle requires you to have a stable early game that is around average in terms of worker, and then you can scale well. If that doesn't happen, if you have a bad early game, those 44 income won't matter too much. I think those 45 income won't do too much as well. I played some Castle lately. I enjoyed it, but I did only enjoy it because I knew how to play around it. I think I guess I did pretty okay with it, but we just had the Shadow Cup and we saw that Castle was actually either one of the worst performing Mastermind options or not picked by the teams in the finals, just because it is that weak early game you have, and if something in the early game goes wrong, you won't really benefit from the extra income towards the late game. So Castle probably still not the go-to Mastermind option. Next on, which surprised me, we have cash out with a very high intensity. We just saw it in the previous tournament for all the players below 2.2k, that cash out actually was one of the most picked Mastermind options. I think it has a lot of popularity out there already, but getting a small buff, I think it was fine before that, but I'm not gonna say no to probably my second most picked or my most picked Mastermind option. And we had some changes on Fiesta, a little bit of gold tweaks here and there. I think Fiesta is very bad in the early and the solo queue. I think you need to play around it as a team. You have to have a teammate that knows what he's doing, that knows how to cover this continuing leaks from your opponent, from your teammate, in order to make your opponent suffer. Right. For Mastermind options towards to Legion spells, we have by far the worst Legion spell, Counter Attack, getting buffed once more. Now instant Mythium you gain is from 45 to 50. That's fine, right? You get 40, for example, in Lizard Army. Well, that's not gonna make it better. And Mythium each league from 45 to 50. Once again, the spell is gonna stay a huge mistake, I think, because you will not be able to get as much Mythium out in a short period of time that you would, for example, get through AoE or Press the Attack or Lizard Army. This spell is more of a scaling spell where you leak a lot. I think it might be a good combination with Fiesta, but usually after 10 you do not want to league on a regular basis with Fiesta anymore. Don't pick it. If there's any other option you can take, go for that. Counterattack very likely still gonna be underperforming. I mean, we see it here low win rate and pick rate. It's gonna stay the same, I hope. Well, Giant Snails, small buffs, right? We had some nerfs some time ago. I think it was around those nerfs that happened last time. Now more or less getting reverted. So we have more HP, we have more damage. I think you do not really need more damage on Giant Snails because you can send them after 10 anyway, and then if it's 10 or 11 damage, it doesn't matter. Just give it some more HP, which is actually the key part about going for Giant Snails. Well, Glacial Touch, very high pick rate. I would like to know the win rate, honestly, because I think it's a very, very strong spell, especially if you know how to use it, because it doesn't matter whether you use it on a ranged or a melee unit. So if you can put it on a ranged unit, always gonna do better. First of all, we have the latest unit before we now get a new one. The Chloropixie is getting a little bit of a attack speed adjustment, a little bit of an attack speed buff, a little bit of a passive Mythium decrease from 8 to 7. So I think this is a hard nerf to it because you were very relying on that 8 Mythium. I mean, we can compare it to a red, which gives you almost double the Mythium, or actually gives you double the Mythium for per gold, which is quite good. Obviously, with Chloropix, you have at least some value on the board, while you have to treasure hunt and reduce your value with pack rats. But I don't know if you want to only get 7 Mythium for a 100 gold unit. You might want to reconsider this, unless it's like 1 Chloropixie for the early game, but then I do not know if you want to take the unit or not. I think that's a hard nerf, might honestly destroy this unit. The upgrade, the final upgrade is the Sakura. It is still the unit you have to play from the start, right? You want to get those early game stacks that are more or less safe, unless your teammate destroys them. Getting some attack speed buffs, I think it was underperforming. It was very slow because you had to build for certain weights. You had to get some stuff for 3. You had to get to defend your double Dragon Turtle that was possible on 4. You suck hard on 7. You're not good on 8. You're not the best on 9. So there were a lot of weak waves you had to overbuild for. So I can definitely see that's getting a buff. I think the buff might still be too low. Alright. One problem we had last patch, right? And last patch I said Pyro is still going to be dead. I think I was a little bit too harsh on it. It is still dead towards like playing Pyro in the long term, but Pyro Opener was insane. Why was Pyro Opener insane? Because you just have this wave 4 that was now getting a lot more damage, and therefore you had the option to push like 1 or even 2 workers in advance for wave 4. Then you had those weak waves coming 6, 7, 8, but with decent units like Millenniums or Banana Bunks, etc., you were able to do fairly well. That change is getting reverted. More or less, I think Pyro is gonna be there, and now, bam, it's gonna be gone again. Pyro still did not get any major buffs. We can actually see that a little bit of attack speed is a buff here, but it's probably not gonna help Pyro out for the entirety of the game to be an effective unit. Okay. I have no clue how OP Gargoyle and Green Devil look to be. I think this is like the 7th or 8th consecutive nerf on Gargoyle and or Green Devil, which is so strange. I mean, how OP has this unit to be in order to get so many nerfs in a row and still being good? I mean, obviously it's good because you have those few spots, right, where it's just fitting in perfectly. You have 3, for example. I mean, you do want this Green Devil, you do want this Gargoyle on wave 3 to just be there and cover you, or just being this 40 gold unit you can add here and there. But apart from that, it's not that OP. It is strong in certain ways, but it's not the best arcane tank you have, because you do have this magic damage attribute to it, which is quite deficit for wave 7 and 14. So it always leaves me a little bit with this question on how those numbers actually look. I mean, it does have high win rate and high pick rate, right? But it had an insane win rate the first time it got into this nerf spiral around, I don't know, 9 months ago. So I'm really curious about this. One bug that was introduced throughout the last weeks was that Tempest and Leviathan had some problems with their passives, where they were dealing damage to a random unit in their range. This bug is now fixed. I think this is overall a buff for Tempest, because Tempest was dealing less damage than it should have, and Leviathan did deal more damage than it should have, and now this bug is getting fixed and everything should be fine. And I mean, a lot of players probably thought Tempest was underperforming, including me. Let's see if it's now going to be better, or if this is only a bug where it doesn't have any effect on the damage output. Let's see. Alright, one thing, and for those that were watching my tier list on regular base, always knew Sea Serpent, Deep Coiler, they have been S tier for so long. They're not anymore, because there's just better options at the moment for pierce damage. There's just better options on pierce damage, for example, Trinity Archer. There's just better options or different builds we have where Sea Serpent is not fitting in anymore. And now we have massive buffs, because I do really see Deep Coiler not being played as much anymore, even though they have this unique ability of sniping ranged units. Now actually getting good buffs. I mean, 30 HP on the Sea Serpent and 100 HP on the Deep Coiler. And let's be honest, they can still be early game monsters. Really looking forward to see that, especially the Deep Coiler here. 100 HP is really turning me on a little bit. Looking forward to try it out again. We have a buff on Asaria, and I honestly never thought this was going to happen. But I think the problem is that Asaria is a very high skilled unit, probably the highest skilled unit, maybe together with Gun and Phoenix. So it does have a low win rate across all ratings, and very likely towards the very top of the players, the very top of the players, they can perform insane with it. Like, there's a lot of highest elo players I know that love playing Asaria, that are very good with playing Asaria and know how to read your limits. And well, this buff is gonna help a lot of those to even establish a more aggressive playstyle. We have Avenger and the Sovereign getting nerfed once again, a little bit of attack speed nerfs on both of them. Then we have damage nerf on the Avenger, which makes it not 3-shot wave 4 anymore. So now you're able to leak wave 4, quite likely, unless you add some stuff. And apparently the Sovereign does have a too high win rate, so a little bit of a HP nerf is needed. I wonder why Sovereign is getting nerfed that much and Phoenix isn't, because Phoenix honestly is a very OP unit in the hands of a high elo player, but probably it's the same to Asaria. The skill gap is just a little bit too high to show how strong it actually is. If you want to check out about Phoenix and how to possibly position it, go check out the video I will link in the description for you about Phoenix positioning. We have a bug fix on gates. We have a bug fix on the gun, and the same happened to Pilgrim, Lifebinder, and Pack Rat. So all bug fixes. I do not know whether this is going to actually change something on the unit or not, just reading what's here. Last but not least, changes on Mercenaries. We have the Pack Leader getting a nerf, which is actually hard. I mean, it is a nerf for the normal unit, a small buff for bosses. And the argumentation is it's too much of a all-time send. I don't know about this one. I mean, the same applies to Mole, basically. So I'm not really happy with this. I think Pack Leader was a good send. I mean, Pack Leader is supposed to be good, I think. I could see the biggest problem still being Pack Leader Imps as one of the strongest combo sends throughout mid-game and early late game, because of the natural defense and the fortified defense that is quite popular in some combinations at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. I think Pack Leader was all fine. Small nerf on Red Eyes. Yes, I agree. Or I, at the moment, probably apart from Pack Leader and Mole, one of the best mercenaries you send, just because of its strength against certain units that are quite popular, Phoenix or Sovereign, for example, and of its power against the king, right? You usually want to get 4 eyes to the king, because then the king has to decide, kill units of the wave or get away of the threat that the 4 eye actually is. So I can see that the 4 eye is getting nerfed here. It seems to me like quite a hard nerf, but maybe this is just looking a little bit too hard now. We will see, I think, a little bit smaller of a nerf, but it's fine as well. Waves, we have attack speed increase by 15% and damage by 14%, which makes the DPS equal on wave 7, 8, 9, and 12. This is in order to make the pack leader change on those waves round about the same. So pack leader in the early game should stay around the same, while pack leader at the very late game, where your Mythium pool is larger, where you can send more, is getting reduced, because you can just get a very high impact unit with the pack leader for a very small price that 160 Mythium are at that late level of the game. Fine. And we do have a small change on wave 18. Wave 18 has been no wave a long time, or like a few weeks ago, getting towards a threat again. The biggest problem you have is still the fact that it's not dealing as much damage to the king. Now it has more HP. The AoE poison that is going to be applied every 3rd or 4th attack. It's getting increased as well. So it's still not stronger against the king itself, but you do have, it's likely a larger amount to leak, which more or less gives a bigger threat to the king. Alright, that's it with all the balancing. That's all what I had to say about it, about the new unit. And then there's one last spot, which is help wanted. So auto attack games are looking for somebody who's creating regular content like videos, memes, and other posts on their social media. Here is a file you can apply for. Show them your knowledge in Legion memes. The requirements are that you're quite familiar with Legion, have a good humor. I think some of you might be interested in that. Go check it out. Once again, link to the patch notes is in the description. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you a good week. Have fun with the new patch and see you next time. Bye bye.